Hello. The Divine Code reading for February 15th, pages 505 and 506. We are in the subchapter Marriage of an Enslaved Woman. Continuing in topic number 11. If, however, the master singled her out for his slave, but the slave has not yet had relations with her. So if the master owns a male slave and a female slave, and he designates the female slave to be married to the male slave, but the slave has not yet had relations with her, or he had relations, but the matter has not been made public. And being made public is a critical part of a marriage for slaves. Another man will not be liable for adultery if he had relations with her. Likewise, if her master had specified her for a free man, we're looking at Minhokino, Commandment 35, Section 21, after which she had the status of a concubine, even though the master can separate her from the man whenever he wants, the master would be liable for adultery with her as long as she is known publicly as the free man's wife or concubine. So whether the man is a free man or a slave, as long as the marriage is known publicly, then that would be considered a valid marriage. And even if the master separated them, because he has the ability to do that, if it's not publicly known that they're no longer together, then anyone who would have relations with the woman would be considered adultery. If the master did not specify a husband for his slave woman, yet it is known publicly that she lives permanently with a certain slave or a free man, and the master does not protest and allows her to do so, another Gentile man will be liable for committing adultery with her. A fortiori, from that which a slave woman is prohibited, even if the master forcibly married her to a slave. However, it is obvious that if he allows his slave woman to live publicly in this marriage relationship, then she has the status of a married woman. So it's the master allowing the woman to be in a marriage situation would be the same as if he brought them together. He's allowing it, and therefore that means that it's a valid marriage. In any situation that a man will be liable for adultery if he cohabits with a slave woman, she would also be liable unless it is a case of rape. And always in the case of if a woman is raped, she is not considered liable for adultery in such a case, but the man would be in that case. Topic number 12. It appears that a minor slave woman who is specified by her master to be a partner for his adult male slave is not considered to be the wife of the slave, since as a minor she does not obtain any status of marriage by her own accord, and the master has no legal right of ownership over her to the extent that he can cause her to have the status of marriage. So as was discussed earlier, in the case of a minor, it's not considered, they don't have the legal ability to have relations for the sake of marriage, because they don't have the maturity to understand the concept of marriage, and therefore that would not be considered a married person, whether it's a free woman or even a free man or a slave. It would not be considered marriage at that point. Rabbi Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg questions this. A master will specify his adult slave woman as a wife for his male slave against her will. See footnote 105. So why then can a master not do the same for his minor slave woman, since he does not have the power to specify the minor slave woman as a concubine for his male slave? So the question is, if in the case of slavery, the master can designate a marriage against the will of the partners. And therefore, why would the will of a partner be important regarding a minor who doesn't have the capacity to have will for marriage? Why would it be valid marriage in the case of an unwilling adult couple and not be considered marriage in the case of a minor who's also not desire, does not have the concept of marriage? The response. In response, the author cites Ron on Tractate Sanhedrin 57a that a Gentile cannot legally acquire the body of a slave woman to have the authority to force a marriage. Still, a master forcibly specifies his adult slave woman for his male slave. She is then considered married, only because it is assumed that she then accepts this marriage upon herself publicly with conscious knowledge that stringency makes other men liable for committing adultery with her. So in the case of the adult woman who, against her will, is being forced into the marriage because she's a slave and she doesn't have the ability to say otherwise, if she becomes publicly known, means that she is showing herself publicly to be in the status of marriage. And therefore that would be considered a acceptable level of a consent on her part. In contrast, a minor girl can be forced to marry, but she will still not consequently have the mature intention for marriage, and therefore her relations are considered mere licentiousness. At most, she is possibly considered to have the legal status of betrothal, and another man who cohabits with her would not be liable for adultery. Because in the case of Gentiles, of non-Jews, betrothal doesn't have the same status as it does within the Jewish law. In the Jewish law, a betrothed person, that would be considered adultery. In non-Jewish law, it would not be considered adultery. It would just be considered licentiousness. Therefore, another man who has relations with her is not liable for the sin of adultery. Topic number 13. It appears that a Gentile woman who specifies herself for a Gentile slave has the law of a concubine and is forbidden as a married woman, and another man who cohabits with her is liable. So within the laws of non-Jews, a concubine is considered the same as married, and therefore adultery would be in the case. In the laws regarding the Jewish law, the concubine does not have the status of full marriage. And this will be discussed more in chapter 4, topic 10 below. In Sheva Mitzvahs Hashem, volume 2, the author writes here about the Torah's law regarding a Canaanite maidservant. The Canaanite slaves discussed in the Torah had a unique status. They underwent a partial religious conversion to Judaism, so that they were neither Gentiles nor full-fledged Jews. And this specifically affected their status in regard to permissible marital relations. A Jewish master of a Canaanite maidservant could designate her for a Jewish servant. See Exodus 21:4 and Rashi there. So in the time of the Torah, there's a concept of the Eved Kanani. This is not that they have a status that's more closer to a Jewish status. They're practically they're very close to being full-fledged Jews. If they were released from their servitude, they would be considered full-fledged Jews. Therefore, their laws do not apply to the Torah law for non-Jews, because they're not really non-Jews at that point. And it's easy to confuse and think that the laws that apply to the Eved Kanani, to the Canaanite slave, would have some bearing on the non-Jewish law, and it doesn't. It's a completely separate topic. These Torah laws apply only in the time when the 50-year Jubilee cycles can be observed. Leviticus 25:8-13, which is when all the 12 tribes of Israel were settled in their respective assigned areas in the land of Israel. This condition ended 100 years before the destruction of the first Holy Temple. Since these laws are not applicable today, the editor has omitted them from the text and inserted a short note of exclamation here on this topic. So apparently in the Hebrew edition, this is this book back here, the Hebrew edition of the Divine Code, there's a more longer explanation of the Eved Kanani at this point, because they're discussing the laws of slaves at this point. So, but it's not relevant to the non-Jews today, and therefore it was left out of the English edition. But it's very nice that they placed the note here concerning this. In practical terms, the designated Canaanite maidservant discussed in the preceding footnote would be forbidden to other men if she were as if she were a married woman, since the Torah law does not call her a wife. In Exodus 21:4, or the Torah does call her wife in Exodus 21:4. If his master gives him a wife, but the Canaanite maidservant does not have the capacity in Torah law to become fully married. Rambam, The Laws of Forbidden Sexual Relations, 14:19. Therefore, other men, either Jews or Gentiles, would have no liability to capital punishment for cohabiting with her, since this would not constitute actual adultery, even though she was designated by her master to be his servant's wife. And this is a very technical difference that doesn't apply today, and it would still be in the category of licentiousness and would be forbidden for that reason. Thank you.